The Senate on Thursday derailed a proposal to give rail workers 7 days of sick leave. In a 52-43 vote, the measure floundered after it failed to garner enough support from Republicans to meet the 60-vote threshold to pass. 6 Republicans joined Senator Bernie Sanders and most of their Democratic colleagues in voting in favor of it, with the exception of Joe Manchin. He was the only Democrat to vote it down. Lawmakers flopped on the sick leave measure, but they fended off a total rail shutdown, averting a nationwide rail strike that was due to happen this week if there was no deal between rail workers and operators. Under the deal that passed the House and Senate, gives rail workers a 24% increase in pay over 5 years, payouts averaging $11,000, and 1 extra paid day off. Though the paid sick leave proposal failed, it does expose the divide within the Republican Party as it tries to paint itself as the party for the working class. The Biden administration, so that's, what do you make of this botch? I think this is an example in real time of the Republican realignment to be the party of the working class. An idea that sometimes I think it's deserved pushback because there hasn't actually been a lot of policy difference. There has been, a focus on Republicans, culturally speaking, being a better fit for the working class, given how progressive socially and culturally the Democratic Party's commitments, because of its, young elite, woke kind of trendsetters dictating what those policies were going to be. But on the hard economic stuff, there's not been that much example of it changing or there being a break with the past. This could be that example. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this really does seem like evidence for what I'm sort of always trying to drive home, which is that the real divide in the Republican Party is not over Trump, but over Trump's protectionist, populist economic agenda. A group of big, high-profile Republicans, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, saw here an opportunity to outflank the Biden administration on the left when it came to protecting working-class jobs. And they did that. They showed up and they did that. They voted with, the vast majority of Democrats to try to protect rail workers. And this really, I completely agree with you. There have been other examples. Marco Rubio's Teams Act, for example, which would give workers a seat at the table for any corporation making more than $1 billion a year. There have been a few other examples. But this really was a startling moment. And there's some really charming reporting about what happened on the Senate floor right after the vote, after Ted Cruz voted yes for the paid sick leave, and he fist bumped Bernie Sanders. And Senator Sanders said to him, "I've always known that you were a socialist," or something along those lines. Look, it's very sad that this didn't pass. And my heart really goes out to the rail workers. They really deserve better treatment, especially given the record profits, billions and billions of dollars that are made by the rail carriers. And what they're asking for is not even that much. I mean, a lot of them will say, we take more unpaid sick leave. The problem is that when they take unpaid sick leave, they get penalized for it. But at the same time, while my heart bleeds for them, and it's horrible that this didn't pass, I think we lost the battle. But in a way, I really do think that they're winning the war. I mean, the working class, if they can get real economic wins out of the Republican Party, and if the Republican Party really can start to see its future as being the future of the working class, that will be a huge victory for this country.
Well, the Biden administration helped broker the deal, and CNN's Jake Tapper held Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg's feet to the fire when he interviewed him about why it failed to protect paid sick leave. Let's watch.
But saying that they ought to have paid sick leave and then getting in there and saying to the Warren Buffetts of the world, give these guys paid sick leave, or the White House is going to make you guys out to be the bad guys, and you're going to be the ones that are forced to blink after your reputations take a number of hits. That's a different matter. We've heard from multiple union workers who feel like the Biden administration has let them down. Gabe Christensen, a freight railroad brakeman who lives in Nevada, he told CNN, quote, "Here we have someone," meaning Biden, "who touted themselves as the most labor-friendly president for many decades, and he basically just betrayed us. There really is no difference between Democrats and Republicans anymore. They're just feeding corporate greed," unquote. What do you say to Gabe Christensen?
Well, if you don't think there's any difference, you should look at the difference between this president, who has advanced good-paying jobs, who has made sure the National Labor Relations Board is able to do its job, who has put in the first card-carrying union member to be labor secretary in a generation, who has upheld everything from Davis-Bacon wages to the kind of working conditions to make sure that unions can thrive, because he believes strongly in American unions, in organized labor, and is proud to be the most actively pro-union president in a generation. Again, that doesn't mean everybody got everything that they wanted.
What do you make of Mayor Pete's response there? I found that pretty, I think that would be pretty frustrating for people who are upset about this policy, to hear him say, oh no, but it's the most pro-union president ever because he's appointed the right people, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, I don't think that gets the job done, does it?
So to me, this was a perfect example of, again, the class divide. You know, when elites talk about the economy, they talk about trade, because that is the part of it that they engage with. That is the part of it that they benefit from. When the working class talks about the economy or thinks about the economy, they're thinking about jobs, because that is the part that they most need. And those are obviously going to be in tension with each other over certain issues. China is a great example, right? But this is another really good example of it. The Biden administration in this case sided with consumers. They really wanted to avert what would have been, of course, everybody would have suffered if there was a shutdown, right? If there was a strike here, right? But who would have suffered the most would have been the consumers, right? Meanwhile, he sacrificed workers on that altar of making things better for the American consumer. And of course, there are consumers in all sectors of the economy, right?
All
Everybody
consumers.
is a consumer.
We're not all
we
workers.
are all consumers,
yeah.
Exactly. But at the same time, you know, there is a huge cost to continuously sacrificing the American worker to the American consumer. That's essentially what we're doing here. And I think that what we're seeing right now is really another realignment, where that is going to keep being the Democrats' position. Whereas the Republicans, like we said, they saw here a real opportunity to say, no, we're going to side with workers over consumers at this point. And we're going to say the most important thing to this nation right now in this question is not that Americans get their Christmas presents, right? It's not that they, get their things on time, but that this small sector of the American economy is so important to us. These workers are so important to us. We're going to side with them.
Right, because if it is that important, then shell out a little bit more for the workers. It's such a minimal request. It's so in line with, what everyone should enjoy. And I don't like from my standpoint, I don't like the specter of kind of Congress coming in and intruding, or the administration coming in and intruding on, a labor dispute between actors who, they should be able to resolve. The workers should be able to, to advocate for better conditions, for better pay, for time off, et cetera, and work that out. And for the administration to come and put their thumbs on the scale, say, no, it's going to be like this, and you just have to stop so there'd be no strike because we can't deal with that. That doesn't sit well with me either. So I've been interested to see this play out, and I am glad they're getting the better pay. Although I've heard people describe, some of the guests we've had, that it really is it's almost back pay, or is back pay. So not as wonderful as it seems.
It's definitely back pay. And also, I think, in terms of, when I talk to rail workers, actually a lot of them are well paid. They don't feel that they're, significantly underpaid, unlike many sectors of the American working class. What they want is to be able to spend a little bit more time with their families. Yeah. And what kind of a country are we where that is not a top priority? I mean, the American family, right? I mean, it's so closely tied with the economic fortunes of the working class, with upward mobility. And here you have these men who are just desperate to spend a little bit more time with their family. And Congress is saying, no, we're going to intrude here. The Biden administration is going to put its finger on the scale of saying no to that. I mean, it's really deplorable.
All right, well, we will have more Rising in just a minute. Please tune back in after these messages.